What was early childhood like?
I was all right, I suppose. Basically raised by my grandparents. My mom had me when she was super young, and they weren't, when I say like 17, right? And so I'm blessed that my grandparents did kind of take the wheel, right? Because my mom was a knucklehead. She still is a knucklehead. She's still in addiction, still actively drinking and everything else. But, it was a blessing. I did get raised by my grandparents, and I couldn't have been any happier for that result of my mom being my mom, you know what I mean?
Was your mom kind of hovering around while your grandparents were raising you, or was she completely out of? She's out of the picture.
Yeah, brother.
Okay.
She is. I suppose if I got my party animal from somewhere, it's her.
Yeah.
Right. So she's, she is tumultuous to say the least, man. She's volatile, and so for that reason, I've had to like set up some boundaries, for certain, especially when it comes to her.
This show is sponsored by Open Recovery Addiction Help. Whether you're newly sober, in long-term sobriety, or even maybe looking to make a change in your life, Open Recovery offers 24/7 support right from your phone. It's anonymous and packed with tools to help you stay connected, stay accountable, and build the life you deserve. Download the Open Recovery Addiction Help app today and take the next step in your recovery journey. Was Dad around?
No, he was a cocaine mule. I don't think it was really like his choice. Like, she was just so damn crazy that like she wasn't conducive for any kind of a career, cocaine mule or not, right? Like, but she and my father, he's gotten his act together in the last like 8 years. But at that time, early 80s, like they were not fit to be parents, and so. And it's all good. So he hit the road, right? And we didn't really know each other, but ironically, we've had very similar lives in several ways, which I find is just fascinating, that he wasn't around ever. And we still have some like similarities as far as the paths that we took, you know what I mean? So
for sure. Did you play sports and stuff growing up?
I attempted, but I didn't have armpit hair until I was like 18. So like I'm like trying out for basketball. I'm like, dude, these guys, grown men, they're dunking from everywhere. I'm like, oh man, it was like, it was a tough, a tough thing to pull off, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah, keeping up. Yeah, of course. I hit puberty late, so I can relate. But then I hit it right in high school, so I got some recognition to go on and then play eventually in college. So I do relate a little bit there.
Right.
A kid playing amongst grown men.
Yeah.
It's not fun.
Yeah. It's like, and I remember like Damian Wilkins, he played for the Orlando Magic, and his son came to our high school.
Yeah.
It was like, as soon as I was like, this is going to make it, even though I wasn't competing directly with him, but it just set our team, apart. Right. And so, it was another, they were up there. There were some real athletes, you know what I mean? And I wasn't one of them.
Right.
So then I started getting into other stuff, you know what I mean?
What was high school like?
It's all right. I mean, I was socially, accepted. I had friends and stuff like that. And then, I lightly mentioned earlier about the party animal thing. That started kind of showing up, and some people like were starting to see it and recognize it, not at home. My grandparents were like old school. My grandpa drank and everything, but he wasn't, he was like a 2 martini lunch guy, but he still had a business. You know what I'm saying? And my grandma, she was like that. They didn't talk much, to be honest with you, right?
Yeah.
They're that old school parenting model, but they didn't ask a lot of questions. So it was kind of like, do your thing, man. And so I was, and so socially, it is where that party animal like really started like cranking up there in high school for certain.
What kind of drugs were you doing? And I'm assuming you were drinking a lot as well.
Anything, man. I think, but in high school, I was short of like cocaine. I wasn't in that crowd. Psychedelics. I was selling weed. I was, doing a lot of things like that. It was to perpetuate the party. That's what it was about. It wasn't about making money. It was just like, I wanted to be that epicenter of these parties, and that could make that, that vocation, of selling drugs makes it a lot easier to be the center of the party. You basically can control the whole thing from a seat. Yeah. And so like I saw that at an early age and I used it.
Yeah. That's awesome. After high school, what did you do?
So I was going to school. Everything was going really well. And then I got a job offering in Vegas, right? And this is a big fork in the road. I'm a senior at UCF here in Orlando, and I get this proposition to go bartend in Las Vegas. And I'm like, hell no, man. Like I got to finish school. I got these ideas, these things. And everybody said, well, do you know how much money a bartender on the Las Vegas Strip makes? And I was all like, and at the time, and I didn't come from a lot of money. So people are talking about 6 figures. I was like, well, maybe I'll go check it out. And it was, so now here I am. I'm talking about being the party animal and selling drugs to be conducive for the party. It's like, why not move to the belly of the beast of all partying on the planet, right? And so here I do it, right? And so I was like 22, and I moved to Vegas. I started bartending, and I was there for 11 years, brother. Which, by the way, like I saw your eyebrows go up, and that's for good reason. Vegas is finite. I know dudes that they make it there 6 hours. I'm like, get the fuck out of here, man. You're going to die. like you're going to be dead if you're here any longer. Like, let's book the ticket and get you out of your way. So I was there 11 years, man. And I was like making decent cash, and I was able to travel, and, my health was still there, right? So I was like, partying and everything, it was still going well, right? So I managed to do that for 11 years, which is kind of a long time. But another little fork in that road is when I broke my leg in Utah. I'm like 4-wheeling, I snapped my tibia and fibula, right? And here I am, I get the green light for pills, right? So I go to see a doctor. They give me enough painkillers to kill a rhinoceros, right? 220, 30 milligram Roxy codones a month. And I'm thinking like, oh yeah, like I'm going to sell some and all this stuff. It was probably not even a couple months before it wasn't enough, right? So I'm like snorting like 6 pills for breakfast, doing about 14 a day, up and down. And most people that know me, they say that this is where like I made a hard left, right? Like they saw it in my eyes, like, man, he's vanished. Cause now I'm losing that balance. My physical, my biology is starting to change. And so I'm stacking copious amounts of narcotics, which is, the best grade of heroin that exists on the planet is pharmaceutical grade heroin. And the roxicodone version makes it to where you can crush it down, you can snort it, you can shoot it, you can do whatever. I mean, the versatility of that drug it's unreal. And here they are. I'm paying $5 total for all of those pills. Instant addict, right? And so, that was a hard left in the journey. And so that's where things like started getting pretty ugly. Like I lost my job because I started stealing money to kind of perpetuate the drugs I needed on top of the 220. So things started getting pretty nasty in Vegas. So what do you do when you're like, well, it's this place, right? And that could be a strong case for anybody. It's like, I want to get my act together and quit doing these drugs. I'll get out of Vegas.
It's a geographical, we always tell ourselves, I just got to get out of here, move to a new place, because that's the problem. It's not me, it's Vegas. What year was this? Like how many years into 11 years did you have that accident?
It's funny that you asked, like those questions, they freak me out. Why? Because it's actually pretty blurry. So I say these terms like 11 years. I really couldn't tell you the dates. I just don't know.
Yeah.
But so ish, right? So like this was 2012 was when I left Vegas and went to Colorado.
Okay.
Right.
But you got hooked on the pills. You had the accident. You took a trip to Utah. And then we're still living in Vegas though. When you got hurt. So you were bartending in Vegas when that was the job you lost.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Continue. Sorry.
And so I'm in Vegas and I'm still like, I'm limping along. People are seeing the writing on the wall, right? People are starting to like have little conversations with me here and there, but I still got the green light from the doctor because this is my medicine, right? Which is total bullshit, but like, and I don't blame them, honestly. And that's a big part of the reason, or the way that I recovered is that I really don't blame them. But they're part of it, right? So I have this green light, but then I lost my job, I lost my insurance. So now that $5 I was paying to get all these drugs, it's gone. So now what am I doing? I'm lying, stealing, cheating, doing everything that a typical addict does because I don't have this luxury of getting handed all these pills every month. So it's like, okay, time to clean up. I go to a small town in Colorado, Estes Park, 6,000 people population. There's like more elk than people. I'm like, this is good, right? Like, there's no way I could find cocaine here. I can find cocaine anywhere. I'm like a bloodhound, right? Like, so I go to Colorado and I'm a whiskey ambassador. I'm selling like high-end whiskey. It's like $900 a serving. On average, it's about $300 a serving. And so I got this clientele coming in, high-end clientele, and like, I'm selling this high-end booze. And so here I am now still perpetuating, the party. I'm still the center of the party. I've changed my dynamic a little bit. And so I step on the gas, like I get there and I'm not getting any better. I'm getting much worse. And at that point, my biology starts giving up, right? Because like after enough time, your health will start to decline. And so as good as I was at finding drugs and still keeping that party going, my body was starting to tap out, right? And so a good friend of mine, he was like, hey, look, man, like, there's a lot of conversations in there. People want me to get better. He didn't know what else to do. A little caveat to this is that I'm stacking up being wanted in different states. So I was wanted in Nevada when I had left. So then I ended up running into some trouble there, like just getting pulled over. But I get another issue to appear, in court, don't go. So I got another warrant. So now I'm wanted in Nevada. I'm wanted in Colorado. My friend turns me in thinking I'll get clean that way, which is not a bad tactic, I suppose. But what I didn't know is I had diabetes. But a doctor had told me I had diabetes. I ignored the hell out of him. I told him, he's full of shit because I wanted to perpetuate the party. And so then I'm in jail, unbeknownst to me that I'm diabetic. And then I get out and I drink this like 84-ounce Mountain Dew, right? I was craving sugar like crazy. And so I go to my buddy's house and my body temperature drops to like 85 degrees. I defecate all over myself. I throw up on myself. He doesn't know what to do because he's a rule breaker. He's probably high at that time too. He didn't know what to do. So I'm dying on his couch and he's like just confused, which anybody could be. But so he ends up calling the ambulance and they had to airlift me to a town that was big enough to triage me, right? Because that little town didn't have what they needed. So I don't remember a damn thing. I'm in a helicopter, which like for whatever reason in my weird sick mind, like I'm like grumpy about not being able to remember the helicopter ride. I'm like, fuck, the helicopter? So I'm in a coma. And I'm in this town and I was in a diabetic coma for like 7 days. I had like a port inside my body. I come to, and this is actually the first scene in my book is that like I come to and I've got like puppets on my toes, like these like little like woven puppets, and I'm like out of my mind, don't know what's going on, and surrounded by people, by the way, which is very cool, right? Like there's like 9 people in that room, and I like come to, and they thought that I just wasn't gonna live. I mean, why would they? My blood sugar was 1100, which I don't know if you know anything about that, but like they'd said they'd never even seen blood sugar that high. And so here, everybody's perplexed on how I'm still alive and then how I got into such bad shape in the first place. And so, this is like, I've got these people, my family comes from Orlando. They're like, we're taking you home. Again, that's going to fix it, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of blasting through here, but that's how I ended up back in Florida. And I remember just, I was about 160 pounds, right? Just like skinny, man. I mean, and it wasn't even the drugs because at the time I went into the coma, I had been clean because of jail, not for too long, a few days, but like that's kind of like, where people, I say that I bring this up because it wasn't a pivotal part of the story. People imagine that it was, but I was in a coma. I didn't know what everybody was going through. I wasn't feeling any pain.
Yeah.
I was like asleep. You know what I mean?
So your family goes out there and you now move back or they drag you back to Orlando.
I was willing.
Oh, okay. You were willing to go. Okay.
Right.
And you knew you needed a change, but you didn't see the pain that everyone went through at the time and really the devastation that it caused, to your family and loved ones.
No idea.
So you go back. Do you move back in with your grandparents?
So grandpa's dead.
Okay. I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah. He actually, held on until I got to Vegas. And then once I got there, he passed. So my grandma's there. Ironically, I owned a house in Orlando. I bought that house for my grandma when I was 22. So here I am. I'm actually the owner of the home, but I'm not welcome. Right. Like at first I was, but it was very clear I wasn't healthy yet. So I'm like starting to get back into it. But now it's just booze. That's all I can find. Right. Or afford. It's all I could afford. It's like cheap ABC liquor, booze, $6 a liter, you know, like, and that's where I'm at. Right. That's all I can really scrounge. That's all I can manage to keep up. And so I own this house. I'm moving with my grandma, but that doesn't last long because I'm still not well. And, you know, I end up homeless, you know? And so I was in Orlando, just like kind of, I say on the streets, but I was in like, you know, I still had like shelters and things like that. I wasn't like in the gutter, technically. I ate out of the gutter occasionally, but like, of course. It was nasty, man. And actually that's like, you know, everybody imagines that the coma, they imagine that like, oh, that's, you know, the pivotal moment. No, man, like rock bottom is this time period. Right. And then you stack up all of these moments together. One thing can be for certain is that it was positively an issue. There was no way ignoring that. That's one blessing about having so many rock bottoms stack up on each other. It's I could not make any argument logically that I wasn't very sick, meaning that I didn't have a serious problem. So yeah, it was, things got pretty bad. It got worse there.
Yeah. Did you end up making your way back to drugs eventually?
Sporadically. Okay. That was just because of money.
Yeah. So it was mainly the booze once you came back and you're jumping from shelter to shelter. What were you doing to come up with money to get booze?
Usually just small handouts from, I mean, people weren't above like, I still had people that cared about me. Just like I mentioned about like waking up in the coma, like there's some people that really cared. And so they weren't like opposed to like slapping $20 in my hand or something like that.
Yeah, of course.
So I was basically just like inching along with that, you know? And then of course my grandma would like, you know, it's pretty bad. When I say grandma, like there's a lot of addicts, like is that grandma piece is like, God bless her, man.
Yeah.
Cause she was, you know, unmistakably, like she just wanted me better. She didn't know how to fix me. Like I said, she was old school. So it wasn't like they talked about their feelings. They didn't know anything about therapy or getting better or anything like that. Right. So here she is. She just wants to get better. So she was always down for like giving me a little bit of cash. That's how I perpetuated it. Right. So
yeah. Now, you said you left Vegas in 2012. You went to Colorado. What year did you move back to Orlando after the coma?
Let's see. I want to say that was probably about 2017.
Okay. So for a few years you were out, you know, using essentially. Are you in contact over those 2 years with your mother when you get back to Orlando?
Right. Yeah. My mom, so she's like around, but she's still very sick and she's still very, very much in active abuse. And so people knew that in the family. Right. So they kind of kept us like they didn't want us mixing together. They knew that there was trouble. But along those lines, at some point in our very blurred perspective and judgment, right? Like we were like, oh, let's move in together. And so here, it's forgive me that so many pieces of this kind of come into the puzzle here. Like my stepfather, her ex-husband, he was an active heroin user, right? He ended up hanging himself in, that was in 2022. But so he's a kind of a piece of that puzzle too. And I start kind of like getting in touch with him. Why? Because he's an active drug addiction. So he didn't have a problem slapping $20 in my hand so I could perpetuate my booze. And so here I am slowly working my way into the most toxic parts of our family, you know, like, and knowing like, this is probably not a good idea. Nobody really wants that to happen, including all the parties that I mentioned, right? Mm-hmm. Knowing that we're all trouble for each other and we get in the way of each other's addictions, most importantly. Like, why share your drugs? Nobody wants to share their drugs.
No.
And so, but my mom got involved and it was actually after, let's see, he had gone to jail. My stepfather had went to prison, or not prison, but jail. And then her and I are living together, and he had left like an 8-ball Coke in the fridge. Don't know why. Can't remember tell you why or how it was there. Or, you know, it's kind of
that's a gift.
Right. And I remember being wrapped loosely in this cellophane. But so here we had like a trifecta, like me and my mom, right? Like we've got a big bag of cocaine. we've got wine and cheap booze, right? And then I also had some anti-seizure medicine for my alcohol withdrawals, which, you know, anybody that knows what that medicine is, it's like akin to Xanax, right? So here we have the trifecta, like we have enough to like have a really good time. So we're in this house, like separately doing all of these things that I had mentioned without each other, you know? And so, you know, this is the big part of my story because I can't really remember much about it, but this goes on for a few days. This is like a kind of a bit of a bender, but I don't remember how it ended except for other than I'm in jail. And I'm in jail for like a while and I'm in Orlando and I'm like looking around. I've been in there for like a few weeks. I'm approaching a month. I'm like, wait a second. Like, I feel like they would have like let me out for being just fucked up, right? Like they'd let you out. Like, okay, you're sober, you know, you dried out, like get the hell out of here. But I'm in there and I'm like, dude, this is like, I've been in here for a minute, you know, like what's going on? Like, and I look at the police report and I see that my mom had written down, I tried to cut her head off. And so I'm looking at her handwriting and I'm like, oh shit, like this makes sense why I'm not going anywhere. And I'm like, this is just taking a turn for the worse. And so I'm looking around, I'm like, oh man, like what am I going to do? You know, my mom said I tried to cut her head off and I don't remember anything about it. That's the part. Now this is why the coma wasn't so much of a pivot, but this is a pivot, is that I started realizing like, I can't even defend myself because I don't remember a damn thing. Right? I have no idea. I'm like, did I try to cut her head off? Like, what exactly happened? And they basically wouldn't have just taken me to jail if there wasn't some kind of evidence of a struggle or evidence of like, you know, a tussle or something, right? And so I ended up I was in there in total for 3 months, right? And I'm like, I'm sick of this. So I start calling on people that I knew that would still come to bat for me and I get bailed out. And so then I eventually like look and I find some police footage, like body cam footage of what it was, what exactly happened, or what did I look like? And I was like, I was well composed. I was speaking very clearly and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, you know, and I'm like, man, you know, and she was in depth. Like her report was like, I sharpened the knives and like I was preparing and I was like plotting to kill her.
Premeditated.
And, and so, you know, that was like a nasty, but again, it was a pivot because I took a blessing from it. There's a silver lining there. And I was like, I'm really not okay with not remembering or being able to defend myself, right? I really can't. And so to this day, I still don't know exactly what happened.
They didn't, there's no story out there of like what happened. Like, did you chase her with a knife?
Bro, it was just me and her. I mean, what the hell? I
yeah.
mean, from what I could gather, like we ended up in the kitchen, we both ended up on the ground and she was bleeding. So now I just don't know what that looks like. And so there's another little like caveat to this is that my mom, she accused my biological father trying to murder her with his cowboy boots and my biological father trying to murder her with like a bookshelf. And then her own mother, right? My grandmother, she accused her of trying to murder her with a telephone. So there's something there too, right? Like it wasn't
it's a theme here.
Yeah, there's a theme, but like, again, I couldn't be, if I had to sit here and promise you that didn't happen, there's no way I could do it.
So you get out after 3 months. I mean, that's attempted murder. Premeditated if she said you were sharpening the knives and whatnot.
With a deadly weapon.
So what happened legally from all of that? How did you get out? Did you get bailed out or?
I got bailed out. And then this is actually, because like I mentioned, so at this point now I was wanted in 3 states, right? So now I've got, you know, so I was like, it's time for me to like do it right. I'm going to like show up to the damn court date. I'm going to do this right. And so, you know, here's Nevada, Colorado, and Florida. I'm like, man, I got to really start turning some of this stuff around, you know, like, so I at least showed up, did my probation and adjudication was withheld. I mean, it's still there. So, you know, I can't rent a room. I can't rent a house or anything like that. And occasionally background checks will show up. A girl that I was dating, she ran a background check on me and it was wild. I don't even know how she managed to get in the car with me. And she handed it to me. And I'm like, why are you even here? You know what I mean? Like, do you just want to hear the story? And she did. She just wanted to hear the story.
Sorry, babe. Don't remember the story. So you're not getting it.
I still wanted to go on the date. So I didn't. I was like,
you filled in the blanks for her. Yeah. Wait, but you never were charged? What happened? It was just dropped or?
Yeah, they basically, if you have a charge like that and nothing else really, like you don't have like a track record of violence and that type of thing.
For murder, attempted murder charge?
Well, it's only my word versus her word, right? So they kind of give you the opportunity. Like if you do everything you're supposed to do, they're basically like, well, maybe that story wasn't all that true. Right. So they allow you to kind of, through good action and a lack of violent behavior. Now, if I would have gotten popped a week later for getting drunk in a bar fight, it would have been nasty.
Yeah.
Right? But like I basically played nice and I did everything I was supposed to. So at the end of it, they're like, okay, maybe it was just he said, she said kind of thing. So now if I get into trouble, anything, it'll stack on top of that for certain.
So Florida is the place to rack up attempted murder charges. They just let you go after like 3 or 4 months.
I mean,
I'm kidding. I'm messing with you.
That was you've got to play nice. You've got to mind your P's and Q's, which I had learned I wouldn't even say I learned my lesson, but at least I made a decision at that point in my life to not run.
Right.
Because it's not something you run away from.
So was this the moment you end up getting sober?
Not really.
Okay,
Yeah.
So what happens after that then?
So then I went to the, here in Florida, they've got like what they call Baker Act. You know what that is?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Baker Act. So it's when you've been deemed to potential harm to yourself or others. And so I was, and again, forgive me for not having direct numbers. I want to say between 12 and 15 times I was Baker Acted. So what happens when you get Baker Acted is you get 72 hours where they'll kind of give you medicine to kind of take the edge off and they'll kind of watch you. And obviously you can't use and you can't drink and everything. So they'll give you medications to where you don't have seizures from the withdrawals. Because I was most certainly drinking a liter of vodka a day. And so if you try to quit that, like alcohol is one of those few drugs that will kill you from going cold turkey if you're drinking that much, right? Your body just can't handle the cessation of it, right? So I knew that, right? So and at first I was being Baker Acted and I'm like, I can't wait to get the hell out of here and keep doing what I was doing. And then after like, I don't know, 7th, 8th time, I was like, I gotta stop this, right? So once you start like 10 plus times, I started trying to use it as a launch pad to like turn things around. So I'm like, okay, 72 hours clean. I'm going to do it this time. And so I'm starting to try to pull resources. I'm begging by the time like they're kicking you out which is what they do. I'm like, where can I go? Like, what can I do? Like, I'm going to be back here in 2 weeks if you don't give me some resources. They never showed up, right? So what ended up happening is that I called on a cousin of mine who I had burned the bridge wholeheartedly, right? She was done with me. I reached out but this time I had a plan. So I took use of that last time being Baker Acted and I kind of came up with a plan and I implemented accountability. I gave her a breathalyzer. I'm like, I'm going to blow every day. I got a job like $10 an hour, which, they said they did background checks. They don't do background checks, but like, because who's going to let a murderer like walk into their place of business? But I was like, oh, they're like, yeah, so we just got to do the background check. I'm like, cool. Just let me know.
I'll never hear from them again. And then
but this time they called me. So I'm like, they're like, yeah. I'm like, so how did that background check go? And they didn't do it. So,
yeah.
But anyways, I had a job. I had a plan. And then that's when I started really, stacking sobriety, the days from my last drink till now. I started stacking them together, man.
What changed this time where you wanted to take that accountability with the breathalyzer and you were doing all of the things required to obviously get where you're at now?
What changed, like mentally? Like what?
Yeah. Why this time did you get sober? This last time? And why not after, let's say, the blues run out, you lose your job. You went into a coma.
Right. I'm a resilient asshole, man. I can endure a lot. like I look at people with such envy that have had like a DUI or a bad hangover. And they're like, oh man, I had this hangover back in college. Man, I was just like done with it. I'm like, I get like this envy. I'm like, man, I just wish I wasn't such an extreme jerk about things. Like, I wouldn't listen to anybody. I wouldn't even listen to myself. Right. So I basically had to dig that hole to the rock bottom, like to where it was like, I was just making sure it was granite. You know what I mean? And so that's what I had done, man. And I was just so over it. I was so done being miserable that, you know, I was fed up. Right. So that there's that key part. And it was irrefutable, right? Like I'd mentioned, there's no person in their right mind, including myself, that wouldn't say that I had a serious alcohol and drug problem. You know, there's just too much evidence, right? So there was no denial. That's gone. It had been out the window for years. And so it was like, now, like, how do I logistically pull it off, right? So I had mentioned I added accountability. That helps out a lot. But then there's some other key parts to that, right? And that's kind of like what I talk about in the book. It's like some tactics I use to kind of implement success, right? Logistically. And so, you know, humility is huge, like starting small, right? Like I talk about this a lot. Like I was fat as hell. I was like 285 pounds. I went from being in a coma, 160 pounds. And then at the peak of being in Florida and drinking a liter of vodka every day, I was like 285. And I was working for $10 an hour. I'm miserable, but I'm sober. Right. So now it's like, okay, what do I do about this mess that I got for a body? Right. So I started doing jumping jacks. And the plan was I was going to do 3 minutes of jumping jacks a day collectively. Like that was the only goal I had. 3 minutes total, maybe 10 seconds at a time, 15 seconds at a time, 20, whatever it took. And that was something that I knew I could do. Right. It's not about what people should do. It's about what they will do. And I knew I could do it throughout a day. Right. So it was like, 3 minutes of jumping jacks total on a 24-hour period is a very humble goal. But even then, the first day, I felt like I got hit by a freaking truck. You know what I mean? Like my ankles were killing me. But that's where it started, man. And I started implementing not just that, but then other like tools, tactics, different things to kind of keep that momentum going and keep like, you know, I was saying it's a perpetual incremental progress is unstoppable, right? So just tiny little improvements. That 3 minutes turned into 4, which turned into 5. Which turned into jogging, which turned into lifting, which turned into me being a personal trainer, which turned into, you know, and it doesn't matter really what you go at. Like if you can approach it humbly enough, just start wherever you're at and just begin with that. Then you can stack it up on another win.
One of the greatest things you just said was the 3 minutes of jumping jacks in the beginning, right? So it's mental, physically, and spiritually getting right, especially when you're first getting sober and clean. Those are the 3 pillars. For me, when I first got clean and sober, I had to do all these things. I mean, I am an addict through and through. So I need to change everything by tomorrow. I need to be, you know, in the gym, jacked, lost X amount of pounds by tomorrow. What you did was you set small, achievable goals. And there is something about a mentality. When you're first getting sober, you just said, I'm going to do 3 minutes of jumping jacks for however long. And then you did that and you kept a consistent routine with small goals that you were achieving. Yeah. And once you start achieving those small goals, it does something to you mentally. Then you're ready for the next thing. Then you're ready for the next thing. But the biggest thing is the patience that you had and the grace that you had for yourself. Because I mean, I can't speak for you. I can speak for myself. I had no grace. I'm my toughest critic. I need to change everything overnight. And if I don't do it, I'm a piece of shit.
Well, then you and I are cut from the same cloth, brother. I mean, I'm the same way. I still struggle with that so bad. I really do. I really do.
But you're aware of it today.
I am aware of it. And I'm not clouded by copious amounts of booze and drugs, right? So it helps. It helps as the clarity increases over time. Like you can gain that perspective. You know, and I'd like to give myself credit for self-applying the grace, but I was also in an environment to where like I didn't have a whole lot of options. I had these whole days that I could contribute. It had to be that simple, right? And so that was, you know, there were some blessings along the way. No mistake about it, right? Like I had the environment that I could apply those and pay attention to, you know, the smaller goals without too much looming, you know, stuff piling up on, you know, like I didn't have too many bills that were backing up on me or anything like that. I didn't have anybody else to be responsible for. That also helped at that point in my life. And so I had some blessings and some fortunate parts of the journey there. That's for certain.
What did you do from a community standpoint? Were you going to like therapy? Were you going to meetings? Were you reaching out to other people who were going through what you were going through?
Not really, man. Not really. I went, because a part of that accountability was I told my cousin I would go to meetings, like I'd go once a week. I did also, another part was therapy. So I was going to her therapist, and that part was cool. But the meetings didn't do it for me, man. Yeah. I got to be honest, and this is just, it's just my opinion. Mm-hmm. Every time I said it out loud, when I said out loud that I'm an alcoholic, I was solidifying it in my own psyche. That's how I felt. Mm-hmm. And I said, I can't, every time it pains me to say it, even though it's the truth. And it can be therapeutic for most and many. Yeah, I understand, but not for myself. Mm-hmm. I felt that I was moving in the wrong direction every time I had said that I was an alcoholic. And then on top of that, I didn't see a whole lot of people I wanted to be like in the rooms. And that might be judgmental, but it was just myself. It was myself. And in speaking of myself, that's kind of where I was. I did a lot of self-reflection. Mm-hmm. I did a lot of observation and measurement of myself through journaling and writing, and of course, writing a book and things like that. Like I felt that was imperative in my journey, where the rooms and then the social element of it, I wasn't getting a lot back from it. Maybe it's because I'm egotistical. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm self-centered. I'm not sure. Maybe who knows? I'm a narcissist. I couldn't tell you. But like, I do know that particular tool, which I know works for so many millions of people, and it's a blessing that it's there, it didn't work for me. So I've had to figure something else out.
Well, there's no one way to recover. There are so many different ways to recover. I know people who went the MAT route, who go to meetings, who don't go to meetings. I know people who had a spiritual experience in the middle of the desert somewhere and then just never went back to drinking or using drugs or gambling or sex addiction, whatever it is. So there is no one way to recover.
Yeah.
And since I started this podcast, I was one of those people where I was like, meetings. If you don't go to meetings, you are not doing. That's ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. We are humans.
Why is that? Why is there such a low tolerance for other options?
You know what? Maybe because I think it was, for me, to speak about myself, it was my experience. I go to meetings today. Meetings are very helpful. When I say I'm an alcoholic, there's something, I'm humbling myself. Because for me, ego is a big thing. My ego gets in the way and I'm like, oh, you know how many times, I can't even count on my fingers how many times I went to meetings. I would get 90 days clean or sober and I'd be like, oh, well, I got the girl back. Or I'm in good standings at work. And then I go and pick up because my ego is like, nah, I got this. I got this.
Right.
So I think it's my experience. And the only way people can relate their sobriety or sobriety in general to anything is their own personal experience. So when they go to meetings and that's really all they're around, they believe there's one way to do it.
I see. Right.
Since doing this podcast for the last, 10 months or so, I have seen so many people sit in that chair and tell me, and they're happy. They have families. They have all of I'm not even talking about the materialistic things. Those genuine connections with their parents who their parents once hated them because they stole money from them or robbed them during their addiction. And they were able to amend that relationship and get all of the promises that are promised to you, at least in the meetings. They were able to do it another way. So I am so open-minded, and I don't shame anyone for any way that they get sober or clean. Right. So it's their journey. And if you're at the end of the day, we live one life. The goal is to just be happy, right? And manage your life or create the life that you want. That's going to make you happy.
Right.
And if you have done that without meetings, and you've accomplished the greater goal, right? There's no one path to get to here. There's a path here. There's a path here. There's a path here. So, you came in, you have your wife, you have a son, 1-year-old son. You have a lot of the gifts, dude. They're humans. I don't want to say it's a materialistic thing, but I could see you're glowing. It has created happiness from within. Yeah. And we have a very good trusted friend, and she speaks the world of you and who you are as a person and the morals that you live by. So let's talk about how you built the life in sobriety. 2019, you get sober. You've implemented all of these different things. even physically to lose the weight. Mentally, you're holding yourself accountable with all these measures in place. You're going to therapy. How did you build the life that you have today? You're married. You have a son. You live in a house in Orlando. And tell me, like, how did you get there?
It's the same damn process with the jumping jacks, man. I mean, over and over and over again. But I was also picking other arenas, right? If you want to look at it like the grand scheme of things, of course, you have your vocation and you have things like that, right? So that is a different. There's skills, of course, involved in like adding value to the marketplace, right? So if you want to put financial and of course like career development, all that kind of stuff under one umbrella, right? I would say skills. I started just building skills that people found valuable, other than perpetuating the party, which I was pretty damn good at, right? So alleyway commerce is what I used to call it. So, but I'm taking some of those skills and building on them constructively in the aspect of vocation and career. But I started just how to write a resume, right? Like it had to be that humbling, and it had to be that way. Okay, with my wife, right? It was like, how do I build a plenty of fish profile? I'm 35 years old. Like I don't know anything about this, right? And I did absolutely horribly, like Tinder, all of them, man. I was just in there swinging at everything, right? Horrid, right? I got no responses. It was probably a blessing that I didn't. But, the old way of doing things wasn't going to work. Bartending and just basically taking anybody home that was willing, right? So like here I am, I'm like, I have to figure out how to achieve a partner that I value, that will be the wife of my kid. So how do I do that when I don't know anything about it? Well, I start humbly. I start from scratch, right? I start from learning to remember how to introduce myself without the help of the alcohol as a social lubricant. Like, how do I do that? Right. Like, even sex, like how do I have sex sober? Right. Like, how do I do that? Right. Like it was like,
it's a big thing.
It's a big thing, dude. It's a big thing. And so I just had to start it humbly in all of these different realms of, but it all started as minuscule as 3 minutes, right? Like whichever way that I went to try to develop myself or grow, I had to start that humbly in every single damn one of them. All of them. I was starting from scratch, right? So that's essentially how I got it done. So small wins, right? And as I said, perpetual incremental progress is unstoppable, right? So it's just that 1% in these different arenas that I desired a life to have, right? Which is socially, having a family, being financially stable, right? Having a decent body, decent physique, and good health, right? Like just going in those general areas and then dialing in, but small little wins over time, man. And then they grow exponentially.
So how did you end up meeting your wife?
It was on an app, but oddly enough, man, like just like you were talking about yourself, like you're a maniac about everything. Like when you were instant results, I was like, I'm going to find a wife. I'm like, what type of wife would I want? And I landed on Filipino. I've always liked the culture. And I was like talking to Filipino friends. I'm like, I'm going to go there. A buddy of mine was actually going to hire some Filipinos to work for his company in Orlando. I'm like, I'll go there. I'll find you some staff and I'm going to find a wife. I'll be back like in a month. And I was like, just because I'm a maniac too, man. Like that was my plan. Right. And then I ran into her on an app and we went on a date and I was like, I don't got to go anywhere, man. So I have a Filipino wife and I love the culture, and we ended up getting that staff and her brother actually works for that company. But anyways, it unfolded into now a pretty darn good marriage. And so, but it was weird because I had an addictive, this is stuff that I always say, man, like addiction can be a superpower, right? Because when you have that tenacity, like the same tenacity that you were mentioning about like wanting instant results and having that like get up and go about things, I had that about finding a wife. I have that about everything. It's my superpower, right? And so I make this argument all the time that like, addicts make the world go round. You know what I mean? Like Steve Jobs, he was addicted to innovation, right? Like he had addictive behaviors, most certainly when it came to that, right? Mother Teresa's addicted to peace, right? She had foregone her own health probably many times for the sake of peace. You'd say that's addictive nature. So I'm just using that superpower now for all of these good parts, right? So
that's amazing. What was, just to go back actually a little bit, your detox when you were coming off of alcohol, when you first got sober, what was that like?
God, dude, nasty. I'd wake up from seizures, covered in pee, whatever. I broke my foot one time. I was hallucinating. They actually diagnosed me. They diagnosed me with schizophrenia. They put me on Risperidone, which is for schizophrenia. And so a very serious drug, by the way. I couldn't wait to get off of that, which I did. But, hallucinations are real when you're going through serious alcohol withdrawals. And it's odd because I knew that it didn't get really scary until about the 48-hour period, 48 hours to 72 hours. That's why they hold you in the tank for 72 hours to kind of alleviate that danger window of seizures and hallucinations and things like that. But I mean, just the worst, man. I woke up in so many hospital beds, handcuffed, just bad news, man. So I would use those Baker Acts as my launch pad because I knew I was at least safe for the 72 hours and then, try to give it another run.
Did it mess with you mentally?
Meaning like mentally, emotionally, or like judgment?
No, I guess just mental as a whole. Did it so when I came off of opiates, physical was probably 5, 6, maybe a week. And then mentally, my thinking didn't go back to normal until like 3 to 6 months. It took a while.
Right. Now, what was it? What was a year for you? Would you say that a year was significantly clearer than 6 months?
Yes. I then started to gain awareness, like outside of myself. Yeah. That was 6 to 12 months.
Exactly. And then it was the amount of clarity that you can achieve or like gain just seemed to, even until now, 6 years, I still feel like I'm gaining certain levels of clarity that, it just seems to expand. Yeah. Right. And it's that part might be one of the wildest downfalls of like perspective and judgment and clarity. Like for instance, time. My entire consideration of the future was about 4 hours because that's how long I was high. I couldn't even think 12 hours into the future. Mm-hmm. And so even being a few months sober, I would have good friends wanted to know, like, where do you see yourself in a year? I'm like, a year? I'm working on a week, I'm working on a month, brother. I can't even stretch my brain that far. And people wouldn't understand that like the amount of time that I could consider in my life was 4 hours. That's it.
Yeah.
I even slept 4 hours. That was all I could handle. I wake back up. Got to get high.
What was it like coming off of the Roxy blues?
Yeah, let me think about that. Well, they took away my script. So then it was like hydrocodones. And then it was like taking 20 of those, which that's not good on the gut, And then it was, I just couldn't find them.
Yeah.
Which I think is still the truth. Like you just can't find those things. Those blues, man, my God, like those were engineered to be probably the most perfect drug ever created as far as like purity, versatility. I mean, sounds like I'm making an ad for them, but like there's a reason why I can't find them. It's because
it's a dangerous drug.
Yeah.
Oxycontin was, I think, that for me was 80 milligram Oxycontins were my downfall. Right. They were pure. It was pure heroin. And it was coming from a lab. So you knew
Did you ever go to heroin?
I did not. Mm. No, but towards the end, I got pill pressed fentanyl pills.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I don't even know what I had.
Fentanyl is no joke. Yeah. It's not something you want to fuck with.
Yeah.
It could kill you.
I'd never not even once, because I got out of it.
Yeah, beforehand.
Yeah.
So tell us about your book.
Yeah. You want me to show it?
Yeah. Show everyone.
Right. So, I wrote it, Man Up, Sober Up. And again, it's memoirs, part memoirs and part like tactics, right? And it's from people that are much wiser than myself. But it's kind of like what I was implementing in my life to put it back together. So the question earlier was like, well, how did you develop these parts of your life? And so there's a lot of answers to that specific question in there. And then of course, some of these rock bottom moments that kind of the culmination of the undeniable rock bottom, like when I look at it as a period of my life, it's like, man, there's no way to misconstrue that was the bottom. Right. So, and that's what it is.
One of the biggest challenges in sobriety for me was managing my emotions. How did you manage your emotions?
I'd be hard pressed to say that I am entirely successful even to this day. I still struggle with the volatility. And then I ask myself the question of how much of that is a part of my nature, or how much of is that a
fleeting thought?
Right. It just, I would say I'm rather even keeled. I'm much more so than I was 5 years ago. Right. Mm-hmm. But my emotions, I feel like this is probably true for any human though, right? Like, how do you manage your emotions? And it's like, you've got to figure out ways to do it. Right. And so earlier in our conversation, you had mentioned like the jumping jacks being a type of a meditation and that kind of a thing. I use physical exercises as just that, right? It's a form of counting, right? It's a form of a cadence, right? Which kind of can lead to a meditative state. So usually physical exercise, if I go any long period of time without that kind of foundation, I start to suffer pretty quickly. So that's one way to do it. And it's a no-brainer, right? Mm-hmm. But other than that, man, I don't have anything in place, which is probably, I should probably do something about that, right?
Well, you talked about you journal.
I do. Well, it's a tactic. I'd say that it's something that, what you observe gets better, whether you're a business, a person, or whatever it is. Like, and so if you're not observing it, then you can't identify the places to get better at. And so, journaling is something that, I kind of skipped my mind, but it's still a tool for managing emotions, managing your to-do list, managing pretty much everything, right? Self-reflection and fleshing it out is invaluable, man.
Yeah. So for me, these thoughts that pop into my head, then they create emotion, right? It's like a chain reaction. I started journaling late in sobriety, kicking myself for that. But when I write down all of the thoughts that are going on in my head and I just get them out of my head and put them down on paper, and then they live in my journal and I put that away. I do it every morning. It helps me manage my emotions. And if I get a strong emotion later in the day, I could pick the book back up,
right,
and write it again, write whatever's going on. And that helps release that emotion a lot. It's therapeutic.
Why the morning?
Why
not manage, or why not like reflect on the emotions that you had in the day? I don't know.
So when I wake up, I don't know if you can relate to this. Maybe I'm speaking just for myself, but that's when the voices are the loudest in the morning. When I wake up, almost every morning, I contemplate my life.
Yeah.
And am I doing the right thing in my life? I'm a piece of shit. No, I'm not a piece of shit. I got this going on. The voices, the chatter, the unmanageability is, so we talked about accomplishing small goals. I have 3 goals every morning that I accomplish. It's get down on my knees. I pray. I read the, Jesus Calling. So I believe in God, of a higher power. And then I journal. I do those 3 things. Do I pick the journal up sometimes again or a third time during the day? Yeah, that does happen. But those emotions are really all over the place in the morning, hence why I do it in the morning, and it's a quick accomplishment. It's something that's done. And that helps me kind of set the mind straight for the day.
I can agree. I agree wholeheartedly that like I wake up and I actually say it sometimes to people that are closest to me that I get attacked by the enemy the first thing in the morning. It's almost like he's been at work chipping away at my mind in my sleep. Of course. And I wake up and it's like sometimes it could feel like a full-on fist fight, right? From just like the moment I open my eyes. So I read scripture too. And it helps a lot because I do feel like a lot of times it is like right up against the very worst enemies, your demons and, the devil and everything else. Like I feel like in the morning is also my point where I feel the most vulnerable, right? It's like, let's get him. He's just waking up. And it's like, dude, you're like, whoa. So like, I do feel like that in the morning too.
Have you had any urges or anything during your 6 years of sobriety?
They're few and far between. And I feel like typically when it does happen, I'm decent now at stretching my thoughts into, this goes back to the future thing. I could stretch my thoughts into what will happen in the next few hours after I make that decision, if I were to pick up or whatever it may be. And so I can I can think of the near future if I were to make that decision now quite easily. So when I do have those urges, and every once in a while, like my wife just went to Hawaii, and there was like a bottle of wine in there that was sitting in there for months. And in front of her, I just took it and then I started pouring it down the sink because they were going to be gone for 2 weeks. I'm just going to be by myself. And she's like, oh, was that a problem? I'm like, well, not necessarily, but I'm not going to let it be a problem. Like, why have it in the refrigerator? Screw it. Like, no, obviously nobody else wants it. So like, why have that staring me in the face when I'm all alone for 2 weeks? So I just get ahead of it. You know what I mean? She was like a little bit concerned. I'm like, no, it's just me being wise about it. Like, there's no reason for that to be in the fridge. So,
yeah. Do you believe in God?
Oh yeah.
What's your connection with God today?
Very personal, right? I turned to scripture first. And that was always, it was big for me, right? With the habit forming and then the higher power. And I didn't have the church or any church really. Because again, I don't know what that is about me that sometimes I just start here first. And so scripture and myself and God was kind of like how I jump-started that relationship. And sometimes I go to church now and I enjoy it, but it's really just a very personal and deep connection that I have through reading scripture. I'm a linguistic person. I like to read. I like to write. I like that kind of a thing. So it's perfect for me.
Mm. So what would be one piece of advice for the listener that was in your shoes, let's say, while you were in Vegas and living a chaotic lifestyle?
So now is this person wanting to get out of it or is this person like in it?
They're listening to my podcast, so they're probably seeking out some kind of hope.
Right. Okay. Get honest with your perspective. Ask some people. That's one thing I wish I kind of had done. Some people had told me and I wasn't willing to listen. But if the inquiry is there in somebody's mind while they're listening to this and they're like wondering if they got an issue, if they're wondering they're in a bad situation, ask some people that are close to you and that care. And if you ask enough of them, you'll get the truth, right? If you ask one or two, you might get a skewed answer. So get an honest and objective opinion about where you are. And obviously not with the people that you're doing it with, right? Mm-hmm. So, and then second, man, is start humbly, man. Start small with whatever it is that you're going after. And if it is sobriety, start with whatever it is that you can handle. Mine was 15 minutes. That's all I could handle without picking up the bottle. Was where it originally started. But whatever direction you decide to go at and use your addiction as a superpower, try to start small and stack up on it. That's my advice, man. Be humble about the beginnings.
Ryan, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. I really had a good time.